Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, we're back with another episode of my 5 Takeaways series. We're going to have this every Monday from now until the end of the NFL season, covering that week's slate. As always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's jump into my first takeaway. Jaylen Warren had a hamstring injury, so we know he exited the game with a hamstring injury. And we have less than 3 weeks until week 1. It's starting to get a little bit concerning. There is serious doubt, I think, for week 1. It seems like it's a 50-50 bet. Now, Najee Harris and Warren rotated with the starters in this game, splitting time essentially 50-50. Warren had 5 routes run and 2 targets, but just 1 carry. Harris had 4 carries, but just 3 routes run and no targets. And because it's Arthur Smith, Cordero Patterson came in for 2 plays with the starters. Woo, we love to see that. Now, the Steelers' offense was, got to tell you, putrid in this game. It was really bad. I see why they want to trade for Brandon Ayuk. They could use him. With both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, it was bad. Now, as for what to do because of this, I have to lower Jaylen Warren in ranks due to the injury because the upside is not there if the offense is going to be this bad. Basically, what I've changed is in the past, when the Steelers have been down to 1 running back, whoever it is an RB1. I no longer think that that's automatically the case. If Jaylen Warren is injured, I do not think Najee Harris is just an RB1 that week. Same for Jaylen Warren if Najee Harris is injured. So I've lowered both of them in Dynasty. I do think this backfield could easily have a much better new player in there in 2025, and it turns out neither Najee Harris nor Jaylen Warren is the player you wanted in Dynasty. So I'd be looking to move on from the players in this backfield. Next up, Carson Steele is the new Chiefs running back stash. And I feel like this has flip-flopped so much since the NFL draft. Imani Bailey was my favorite stash post-NFL draft. Then Steele came in and kind of took that spot. Then Deneric Prince was running back 2 with behind Isaiah Pacheco with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out for a while, with Steele playing fullback. Now, Steele played ahead of Prince in this game after Prince had some miscues in the first preseason game. Only Steele and Pacheco played with Patrick Mahomes, while Prince entered the game with the backups in this preseason game. It was very clear that those were the top 2. Now, Steele didn't do anything. He had 3 carries for 8 yards, 2 catches for -3 yards. It's not like he was impressive on the field, but it's the spot in the rotation that matters. If I had to guess, I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire somehow is still the Chiefs running back 2. But Steele is the running back 3 and also the fullback simultaneously. I think he's both of those things. Therefore, Steele is a must-add in all Dynasty leagues. Of all the players this week, this is the one who could have still been on waiver wires, who is a must-add. You must add Carson Steele to your Dynasty rosters. Absolutely. As for Prince, I think he's fighting for a roster spot. He did have a nice 41-yard run. So I wouldn't cut him yet because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still nowhere to be found. So maybe there's still a role for Prince. For now, I think that because Prince showed something, Steele showed something at fullback as well as running back, I think the Chiefs keep all 4. Pacheco, CEH, Prince, and Steele because of Steele's fullback versatility. But either way, I still think even though he might be a fullback, Steele is a must-add in all Dynasty leagues. Next up, Gardner Minshew is the Raiders starter by default. Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce named Minshew the starting quarterback for 2024. Woo, yay. He started the game and went 10 of 21 for 95 yards. But Minshew did nothing to earn the job. He didn't earn the job. Instead, it was Aiden O'Connell's disastrous pick 6 that lost him the job because he can't take care of the football. However, it doesn't really matter to me who the Raiders quarterback is. It changes nothing. Nothing for any other Raiders player. This opens up a sell window for Minshew, though, who will probably lose the job at some point in season. Again, Gardner Minshew has looked bad, but Aiden O'Connell has been worse. So I think they made the choice based on performance. I would sell Minshew for any future second, even in 2026. I have just no interest in Gardner Minshew at all. This is a sell window you might have. If you have Aiden O'Connell, hang on to him and wait for Gardner Minshew to fail, and then maybe you'll have a sell window for him later on. But for now, put Gardner Minshew on the block while he has value, probably for the last time in his. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month and include all of that. And of course, this is a Dynasty Fantasy Football channel, but I do cover redraft and start sit content on the Patreon. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out my why you should join the Patreon video on the channel. It was released in early August. Check it out. I promise it'll make you want to sign up. And lastly, I really appreciate everyone who signed up and any new patrons who joined. As you know, I am a fully independent content creator. It's really hard to do that. I'm really trying my best, but you know, it's hard. So anyone who wants to join, it would really mean a lot to me. And, you know, most things are going to be Patreon exclusives now. So I really hope that you join and check it out. The link is in the top right corner. Now, the next takeaway, the Giants are a Malik Nabers and Devin Singletary offense, or a Malik Nabers and Devin Singletary world, and everyone else is just living in it. It's very clear. Nabers played 30 of 33 snaps with Daniel Jones. Nabers had 4 catches for 54 yards on 6 targets. Solid game for the preseason. He also had a rushing attempt for 5 yards. No other Giants wide receiver played more than 20 snaps. Wan'Dale Robinson is the slot receiver. He played every single snap in 11 personnel, but he didn't play any outside of that. No snaps in 2 wide receiver sets. And I do want to say, all of this data, you know, most of this comes from PFF, some from other sources on Twitter. You know, Nathan Junk, I don't know how to pronounce that. It's a great job compiling the data. So I always say, very important to know what are good data sources, because then we take the data sources, people who do a great job compiling data, not my strong suit, and then we use those data sources to make our own fantasy and dynasty takeaways, what we're doing here. Very important to realize, you know, how the content comes together. So just appreciate everyone who compiles all that data. That's how this was brought to my attention. Either way, though, it's important, as Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton are rotating at the Z position, while the other wide receiver, to complement Robinson in the slot and Nabers at your traditional X, making both very unappealing and unusable. Very unappealing and unusable. So we don't really want those players. Wan'Dale Robinson might be a nice value. Depends on how much 11 the Giants play, really. But there's no competition for Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers is the guy. As for Devin Singletary, kind of the same thing. 29 of 33 snaps with Daniel Jones. Yes, Tyrone Tracy was out, but he did still play all these snaps. Ran 15 routes and had 10 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it's not like he was efficient, but he was a workhorse. In redraft or on contending dynasty teams, I am comfortable having Singletary as my RB2. We know that I like to fade running back in dynasty, so very comfortable with him. I'm very comfortable. That's my takeaway from this. A takeaway is that I'm comfortable with Singletary. But if you're in rebuild, now's a good time to sell. Put him on the block, see what you can get. Lastly, and I'll just say this is going to be kind of a feature maybe of these takeaways. Not every takeaway is going to be super actionable. Sometimes there's something I think is just interesting. You know, we're going to have this video on Monday, and then I'm planning a video on Tuesday, some version of moves to make, somewhat involving the waiver wire, since that's what we do on Tuesdays, but other moves to make. That'll be a Tuesday video, complement this Monday video. But what that means is on the Monday video, we'll have time for things that are just interesting, like this. John Metchie deserves a chance. Now, I feel bad for Metchie. He was a second-round pick in 2022, but missed his entire rookie year due to leukemia. And, you know, it's just great that he got back on the field at all. But the Texans brought in a new head coach in 2023. Didn't draft John Metchie. And then, you know, he struggled to get back in the mix. 16 catches for 158 yards. He didn't really do much. Now, he didn't play with the starters this week. And there is literally zero path for him to be in the top 3, right? I mean, no one's displacing Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs. But Metchie did look really good. 6 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. And he really looked good. I watched actually a couple of plays of this game because I was watching the Giants, and that didn't make me optimistic as a Giants fan. But the Texans have so many wide receivers with Noah Brown, Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, Ben Skowronek, and Metchie behind their big 3. Now, obviously, all of those players are not going to make the team. They're not going to keep 8 wide receivers. At most, they're going to keep 5 or 6. So at least 2 of those players are going to be cut or traded. Maybe Metchie will get traded and have his chance to showcase his talents for another team. I do think, I mean, he was a player who had, remember, 96 catches, 1,142 yards, and 8 touchdowns in Alabama in 2021, playing alongside Jamison Williams. So he's probably not horrible, but, you know, it'll probably never happen. But I do think it's something interesting. Keep an eye on in the deepest of dynasty leagues, but nothing more than that for John Metchie. Now, we're going to close out with some Patreon questions. I have a bunch of them. We'll see how many we get to. But let's just start with the first one. Who do you prefer in one quarterback dynasty, Puka or Garrett Wilson, and why? I love both players, but I think Wilson is a better talent. It's kind of a toss-up for me, though. I'd be happy to take either one in the first round of a 1 QB startup, but because Puka is hurt right now, I have Garrett Wilson 1 spot higher. They're actually back-to-back in my rankings. How do you feel about Drake May now that he was able to show some of what he's working with skill-wise? Unlike most people, I talked about May's rushing upside the entire time. This is not a surprise to me. I do think the Patriots are a horrific team, but I don't see any reason why May is not ready to play in the NFL. I'm not saying that May is Josh Allen. Let's make that very clear. I am not saying that May is Josh Allen, but I think that Allen benefited from the reps he got in 2018 and 2019 with a horrible supporting cast before getting Stephon Diggs in 2020. He took the leap. I think you're better off getting the reps. I think May has shown he is ready to play in the NFL. Maybe Jacoby Brissett starts week 1, but I would put the over-under at like 4 games that Jacoby Brissett starts at this point. I was maybe more like 6 or 8 before. I do think Drake May gets in there very, very early. I'm pretty confident in him. I think he's a good player. I've always liked him as a prospect. Next up, would you mind highlighting again why Rome Odunze is such a good prospect? One knock I've heard about him is his later breakout season, the 3rd season. That's true. He didn't break out until his age 20 season, but for him, the third season was only his age 20 season, so it's not as bad. Doesn't mean he can't hit. I mean, I think he will. Usually the major warning sign is what, like your Xavier Legette, someone who does 0 for 4 years and then breaks out as a much older player. Breaking out in a real 3rd season at age 20 is not awful. Odunze led Washington in receptions in his 2nd year, wasn't a total 0. And in his 1st year, Washington only played 4 games because of the pandemic. So he didn't really have an opportunity to play in that 1st year. So is it fair to count that against him? If you look at the 1st year as more of a redshirt year, then his profile is a lot better. It's not like Washington played 13 games and he did nothing. They only played 4 games. So that's why I'm probably higher on Odunze than maybe I would be if he sat the whole season and literally did nothing. We won't know what he would have done if there were 9 more games that year. So that's kind of why I'm a little bit higher on him. And we're going to, this is maybe we'll have 1 more year where the pandemic has a big effect on the class, but we do have a lot of players in this class where it mattered, where we have to take that into account because that's something that these players had no control over. And yeah, it's just something to consider. So I think we'll leave it there for this video. If you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Click on it, top right corner. Dynasty redraft starts it and more. And I cannot emphasize this enough. You will not regret signing up for the Patreon. It's going to help you win your leagues. I promise. I wouldn't keep pushing it if I didn't believe in it. And every sign up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.